been thinking for quite a while about the experience of success, and not so much what it is, but how to recognise it when we achieve it, how to really know and understand success. I've come up with some conclusions fairly recently, and I'm going to share those in this video. When you have a defined goal and a target to achieve, it's quite easy to know when you've got there and to understand what success is when you've got those kind of measures in place. But on this path of answering the call to do more with your life, I'm advocating really letting go of setting goals, because my experience of setting goals was how much I was limited by them. And my experience of setting goals was when I achieved them, when I got to the place where I predicted I was going to be, it wasn't really the fulfilling place that I wanted it to be. It felt quite empty. And I started to wonder, I started to question, is this it? Is this what life is about? And that was quite an unfulfilling place to get to. I've really transitioned my attitude towards goals and success since that time. So on this path of answering the call to do more with your life, I'm advocating really letting go of those targeted goals because they're limited by our imagination, really opening ourselves up to uncertainty and allowing life to unfold and see the excitement of where that takes us. But that's also quite a difficult space to manage. This 7th phase of answering the call to do more with your life is all about being in the uncertainty of when we set ourselves on a path and allow it to unfold. And I also advocate letting go of metric measures of success like number of followers on social media or sales or income, those kind of real metric, easily measurable successes. So how do we know when we're successful? That's what I've been really trying to consider and, as I said, come up with some conclusions fairly recently. So first of all, I guess we've got these binary positions of success and failure and how we want to move towards success and away from failure. And that's quite logical, isn't it? But I guess it's these binary positions that I struggle with because when I look back on my life, I don't really know how much success I've achieved, but I also don't really know how much failure there's been. Because the difficulties that I've had in my life and the challenges that I've had that you could consider failures are actually the experiences where I've learned most from and have actually made me the person I am today. I wouldn't be sitting here having the messages that I have today if it hadn't been for my failures or my difficulties. I'll give you a bit of an example of that. So when I trained to be a coach, part of that training I had to submit a recorded session for evaluation, and that was the final thing that I submitted that would gain my qualification. So the first time I submitted this recorded session, I failed. It didn't pass the standards. Now, of course, they didn't say you failed. They said you have to resubmit this recorded session. So they give you a few attempts at doing that, but I passed on my second attempt. And when I got that feedback that my recorded session wasn't good enough for the standard, I was gutted. I was really gutted. You can imagine, actually, I was really proud of this session I'd done. I really enjoyed the work. I thought there were some really great moments with the clients. I knew that there was stuff in there that wasn't right, but I thought if I'd explained that properly and I understood that I might pass. But anyway, I didn't pass. And as I said, I was really gutted. I was really upset by that failure. But actually what that meant that I did was it really meant that I had to work so much harder on these coaching skills, and getting the feedback that I got, I understood where my strengths were and I understood where my limitations were as a coach. And I gained so much more experience from that. And in order to get my session passed, so I got the qualification, I ended up getting more mentoring, more guidance, more practice. And as a result, I am a much better coach for having had that failure. So that failure is something that's made me. So that's just an example of how a failure has made me. And there's been other things that have happened in my life that have given me amazing experiences, amazing insight. So I wouldn't really class those as failures. But what about successes? So the things that I class as the greatest successes in my life are My marriage, I really class my marriage as a success. I didn't ever think I was going to meet a man like my husband, and we have a great life. So that's one thing that I really do chalk up as a great success. And the other thing is being 20 years sober, having 20 years of sobriety at the age of 47. That's a great success for me. I don't really class that as my own success. That required a lot of help from a lot of other people in order to get to where I am. So yeah, successes, but how I chalk them up, I don't really know. So I guess we're encouraged to choose our own success measures. And I encourage letting go of those metric measures, particularly of things around finance and income and social media recognition, that kind of stuff. Because once we start to measure that stuff, that's what we'll chase and that's what we'll start to pursue. And for me, that's not a healthy pursuit. I could get very lost in that. And that's why, and I know myself, and that's why that I don't put those success measures first. It's not that I don't want those success measures, don't get me wrong. It's not that I don't want those things in my life, I do. But I don't want those to be the end aim of my life. I want those to be a consequence of everything that I'm doing. And I recognise that in letting go of those kind of pursuits, how much more rich and meaningful my life has become, and how much more I really feel that I've got to offer because I'm really working on a different level. So being on this path of answering the call to do more with my life has led me towards doing some stuff that I never dreamed possible and I never saw myself being able to do. And that's amazing, and that gives me great hope for the future. And I guess that's why I really advocate letting go of all those measures, because it enables you to get that much more meaningful and fulfilling experience, and you will find yourself doing stuff that you never dreamed possible and never dreamed that you would be doing. And I think that's a great measure of success, to recognise when I get to a place, I never thought I'd be doing this, what I'm doing now. How amazing is that? And recognising where that comes from, it's really important to know. My success measures, I guess, are how much value I can create in what I'm doing, how much value I can really believe in what I'm doing. Then that's quite an important success measure for me. So yeah, so it's choosing success measures that are meaningful. And I spoke before about intentions and about how my intention of really loving what I do, and that's a success measure for me, but it's a bit intangible, isn't it? It's a bit difficult to recognise. So my learnings about recognising success have really come about through my client work fairly recently, and particularly this project I've been doing around the purpose of self-doubt. Now, something that's been really consistent amongst all the work I've done with all the clients I've worked with is this inability to recognise and acknowledge achievements quite often, not all the time, but quite often, a real inability to be able to acknowledge achievements when we've got there. And how it works like this is that when somebody, I guess, has low self-esteem or low self-worth and is suffering from self-doubt, that when they achieve something, they will automatically discount it because they've achieved it. So it becomes meaningless because they've achieved it. And if I can achieve it, then anyone else can achieve it. By discounting our own achievements, we're discounting our own success and we're not recognising it. So the thing is that how do we recognise success when we get there? I asked a question on social media this week, and I asked people, when you think about being successful, how do you imagine it's going to feel? And I had a few replies to that, and they were along the lines of feeling pride, a sense of inner calm, recognising that might be something that might be quite difficult to maintain. There was a recognition there that success might be something that actually might be difficult to maintain. Money definitely came into it, money never being a worry, money being able to buy all the things that money can buy and all those comforts, so comfort and that kind of satisfaction that comes with having the comfort blanket of money, that was definitely a theme that came up. Feeling confident, success brings confidence that we can achieve more, and success gets rid of the imposter syndrome. So when we get to success, we won't feel that imposter syndrome, we won't feel like imposters. That's quite interesting to note. A sense of satisfaction, feeling lucky, feeling grateful, feeling comfortable, feeling contentment, feeling happiness, and feeling recognised. These were some of the things that came up and some of the themes that I'm talking about here. So here's the thing that I guess has been the really significant thing that I've noticed about success, is that I don't really think success feels like what we think it's going to feel like. And I guess it comes back to these binary positions of success and failure, and how these binary positions do not fit with the human experience. The human experience is at any given moment a full range of emotions and conflicting stuff going on inside of us. So even though we get to that point of feeling successful and feeling really proud of something we've done and feeling real pride in an achievement, and I do think that's a great measure of success and something that's really important to notice, we also have to be quite careful about that pride and how that pride can make us arrogant, and most people know that and recognise that, so they have to work with that. So there's that kind of balance there. I feel proud, but am I going to get too proud? And what else comes with success? So here's an interesting example. I was watching the World Championships athletics a couple of weeks ago, and Dina Asher-Smith, who is representing Great Britain, won the 200-metre gold in the 200-metre sprint, and that's really unusual for someone from our country to win that event. She had a massive achievement she did in winning that. And I watched her reaction after she'd won that event, and it was quite obvious that she was completely exhausted and really emotional. And even though she was really happy and really proud of that sense of achievement, she was visibly emotional and exhausted. And she went up to the stand to take the interview, and her mum came over to her. She just broke down to tears, bless her. And she looked quite alone out there, even though she had her mum, but she had looked quite alone out there. And it really made me think about that experience of success. And when you work hard she obviously had a goal to achieve, but when you work so hard to achieve something, if you're really stretching yourself, if you're really pushing yourselves beyond your boundaries, when you get there, you're going to be exhausted. And this is one of the conflicting things I've experienced about successes, especially in recent times, that when I've got to a place, I've worked towards doing something, and I've got to the other side of doing that thing, and that sense of absolute exhaustion can be really overwhelming. And that's kind of been the prominent experience that I've felt around success, being absolutely exhausted. So yeah, it's good to recognise that actually that exhaustion is a measure of success. So although you may feel proud and you feel like you've achieved, you're going to feel exhausted as well. If you've really pushed yourself, you should feel like that. There's the money, the money that can come with success. That's a great measure of success, isn't it? And I think, that in our society, that's something that so many of us want, because we equate that with comfort, satisfaction and freedom. But also, there's a great burden that comes with money as well. Money can put you into a different sphere than everybody else. Money can make you lonely, and money can bring pressures. Having money is something that that's a difficult experience to manage as well. So that's not necessarily going to make us happy, having the money. Sense of satisfaction. Now, that sense of satisfaction can also be measured up with a sense of disappointment, because when you've achieved something, you sometimes set yourself on a different level. And on putting yourself on a different level, you may find yourself leaving things behind that you never thought you were going to leave behind, or you may find yourself feeling quite isolated because, there may be people out there who are not supportive of your success or don't want to be a part of your success, even though you recognise that in yourself, they don't recognise it in you. So there can be a real sense of disappointment and a sense of loss that goes along with that. Being recognised as a measure of success, putting yourself out there, getting that recognition as a measure of success. Now, that can also come with a huge sense of vulnerability. I don't know if you've seen Bréne Brown's talk about doing her first TED talk about the voices of shame and vulnerability. I can't remember exactly what it's called. I'll put a link below. But she talks about having a vulnerability hangover when she really put herself out there. And that's also something that can be a great sign of success. When you've really gone out there and you've put yourself out there at a different level and you're getting recognised, that can bring a sense of vulnerability as well, because you're really out there and there's nowhere to hide anymore. That's also a measure of success to notice. Now, confidence. Now, does confidence come with success? Now, this is the thing that I've found really difficult to notice about how confidence comes with success, because it doesn't necessarily, because what I've found is that when you achieve something in a certain area, it doesn't necessarily give you the confidence that you can replicate that success, and it doesn't give you the confidence that you can achieve that success in another area. So that confidence doesn't necessarily come with success. And the other part of that as well is you're talking about that imposter. Now, think about this way. It is not possible to experience being an imposter if you haven't achieved success. So feeling like an imposter is also a result of achieving success. It's not possible to feel like an imposter if you haven't achieved that success. Now that feeling of an imposter and do I deserve this and do I belong here? Am I going to get found out? That is a measure of success. You can't experience that if you haven't had success. That imposter syndrome is something that's also really prominent in my work around self-doubt. But think about that as a measure of success. Happiness. Now, this is the thing I talked about when seeing Dina Asher-Smith win that 200-metre race. And the happiness, obviously, it was obvious on her face, but with that happiness also came such raw emotion. It was really obvious, the emotion just spilled out of her. And that is also a measure of success. So recognising that happiness can come with like that real raw emotion and that vulnerability. The rewarding place that you get to, and it's like a plateau. And that can also be coupled with a sense of, well, what now? That's a difficult place to get to as well. Okay, I've achieved in this particular area, but what now? Where do I go now? I've come so far. Have I got the energy to go any further? That's also something that I've really experienced along this path of answering the call to do more with your life. I guess what I'm saying is that these binary measures of success and failure are not so relevant when we're talking about the human experience, because the human experience is this range of emotions. And the other thing to say about success is that if you have worked really hard to get to where you want to be, that it's going to feel very unfamiliar. It's not going to feel like familiar territory. And being in unfamiliar territory is a fundamental threat to that part of us that has evolved to keep us safe and to keep us comfortable and keep us in the familiar. So being in the unfamiliar zone of success can also feel quite threatening, and it's really good to notice that. So being in that zone of success can be quite as threatening as being in that zone of failure. I'd just like to finish off with this, and this is the line from the poem that always comes to me when I think about success and failure, and it's the Rudyard Kipling poem If. And it's got that line and it says, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two imposters just the same. He's calling those experiences of triumph and disaster or success and failure as imposters themselves. And that's how I like to understand them. These kind of binary positions, they are imposters and they do lead us astray. So if we can treat those as just the same, that's what he's proposing in this poem. And that's what brings us real success and understanding we're not measured by these positions. Treat those two imposters just the same, and those two imposters are all just part of the human experience and all things that we can learn from and create wisdom from. So there's a few of my ramblings, and I hope that's connected with you. I hope that makes sense. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this if you have any. And recognising that I'm keeping learning and keeping understanding. But the point is, will you recognise success when you get there? Will you recognise achievement and recognise that achievement and that success, you may not recognise it because it doesn't feel the way that you expected it to feel. In my next video, I'm going to talk about my favourite subject at the moment, which is the purpose of self-doubt. So I hope you'll join me for that.